I was very much into watching Zatch Bell when I was younger, when the series aired in the US on the Toonami programming block on Cartoon Network. And yet, when the series ended abruptly, I guess I just forgot about it. But I finally did read all of Konjiki no Gash, the original comic series, sometime during the early 20s. I thought it was great. It's not without its flaws, including some major ones that I'll be addressing in this video series, but definitely a good read that I'd recommend to others. Eventually, I came around to watching in its entirety the animated television adaptation Konjiki no Gash Bell, and it is certainly something. In the same way that every weekly adaptation of a weekly source material that doesn't have to be 100% faithful to the material is something. Sometimes it expands on the material, with added humor, character depth, or concepts that could be interesting to explore. Other times it repeats jokes or story beats, it forgets how things work or what happened in the setting being explored, and it can torture its viewers with padding, be it long recaps or flashbacks to scenes you only just saw 5 minutes ago. And at some point I got the idea of making videos to explore the two series, primarily in its third story arc, the Faudo arc. I wanted to explain and express my fascination with the two takes on the same story, where one starts with some notable differences from the other, only to end in a way that, if an animated version of the recent sequel series were to ever be made, not only would they first need to adapt the final arc that was never touched by this show, but they would have to redo this arc as well. The next segment is a brief recap of the series up to this point if you're unfamiliar with the series but you're curious enough to hear some guy, that's me, ramble on about it. If you aren't, timestamps are marked for your convenience. Also, I might be titling this video with Zatch in the name, but I will be referring to characters by their original Japanese names. 100 demon children fight in the human world for the right to rule their own. They're all paired up with a human partner who reads spells from a book to allow the demons to use their powers. When a book is burned, the demon is out of the running to become king and returns to the demon world. This brings us to our main duo, the very intelligent and easily annoyed human Takamine Kiyomaro and his demon partner, the extremely good-natured amnesiac Gash Bell. Gash becomes determined to win and become a kind king. He wants to prevent the cruelty of the battle, in which not every demon wanted to leave home and fight, from happening again. They've made a number of allies over the course of the story so far, and have continued to become stronger and be able to strategize when that isn't enough. The series revolved around a mix of the duo's daily lives and the battles with other demons in what is referred to as the first arc, as the series is generally divided into 4 story arcs. The second arc featured the demon Zofis, who planned to win by using an army of hypnotized humans and demons that were petrified and left in this world for the last 1,000 years. A prime example of how needlessly cruel this fight can be. Oh, you're encased in stone? Well, you're out of the tournament. But the book ain't burned, so you don't get to go home. It's the first time Gash and Kiyomaro had teamed up with basically all of the allies that they had made up to that point, illustrating the widening scale of the conflict. Wait, little monkey rabbit? No wait, sorry, I'm thinking of Mon. The first chapter of the arc features a character named Mon. Thank you for having these names be a single character apart. The chapter serves as a breather between the intense fighting in the last long storyline and the beginning of the build-up to the next one in the following chapter, or level as these are called, but I'll still be using the word chapter, don't worry about it. A week of tests is about to start, and Kiyomaro is up a creek. He was preoccupied with the Millennium Demon situation, so he has no idea what the coursework he missed is about. His classmate, Mizuno Suzume, gets her moment to shine, after Gash is nice enough to get some other friends out of the way, and she lends Kiyomaro her notes. He hands them back with a ton of corrections, but it was still a helpful gesture. Standing in the way of this resolving very quickly are 2 teachers. Toyama-sensei, who is not disclosing what parts of the course are relevant to the test because he wants to see these children, specifically the protagonist, fail, and a new character, Mon-sensei, a woman who wakes up every morning and says, "Ah yes, I shall dress like this for my job as an educator." You know, I'd almost get it if she was teaching music, but she's a language teacher, so whatever, I guess. Mon is doing the same thing with the test, not because she has a grudge against the kids, but because she really enjoys seeing them in agony. In fact, it's literally her namesake. Ultimately, these 2 tests involve clay sculpting and haiku writing, resulting in everyone except the genius Kiyomaro doing well. This is a fine little return to daily life chapter. It gives the spotlight back to the classmate characters, after they hadn't been seen in a while by the audience reading this every week. It does well with its humor, and it has good Suzume moments, meaning it's good by default. Really, the only misgiving I might have about it is Umagon, the character whose part in the story I just skipped over entirely. Since he finally found his partner in the last arc, Kafka Sunbeam, it was revealed at the start of the chapter that he had moved out of the Takamine house, only for him to come back at the end of this chapter, since not every apartment is down with its tenants keeping horses, and saying he's actually a demon is probably the opposite of helpful. But I don't care for the fake out, especially since he is going to be moving out in just a little while. Gosh, the status quo sure is changing. Oh, never mind. In the next chapter, where the action starts to heat up again, Kiyomaru begins to worry about whether or not he and Gash were being watched. And they are! This funny little beeping guy is their opponent, the demon Coral Q and his human partner, Grub. After school, Kiyomaru still can't shake the feeling that someone, other than Suzume, has been watching him. Subsequently, an obvious trap is in motion. Gash chasing a fish is par for the course for him, but this one is flying. Is heard off panel, and the way back is blown up, cornering our duo. Coral Q transforms with the spell Roboruku. 1, 2. A transformation so incomprehensible, Kiyomaru actually asks Coral Q if he could do it again. Roboruku. 1, 2. This joke is amazing, making good use of the medium the story is being told in. Kiyomaru takes this opportunity to attack, only for it to not seem as effective as he would have hoped. Coral Q is prepared for this fight, listing out all 7 of Gash's spells. He then acts a little too cocky, even though he did still scream no when electrocuted a moment ago, so... Zakerega! Perhaps if Coral Q were also a combining robot, he wouldn't be going through this. Zakerega! After 3 hits, Q is ready to throw in the towel, only for Grub to say, "No, stupid, this isn't the spell that counters that one." Don't know why you waited so long to say anything, Grub, but yeah, Zakerega is now repelled. One after another, we see Q and Grub have a response to everything Gash and Kiyomaru have. Missiles that pierce the defensive Rashirudo, a rubber form that turns off Jikerudo's magnetization, and a form with enough power and speed to match the body-enhancing Rauzaruku. This leaves Gash and Kiyomaru with only Zaguruzemu, which stores electricity inside a target to power up an attack, and Baozakerega, their finishing move. Coral Q has a radar that they've been able to use to track other demons. That's why they know Gash's spells, the name of their allies, and about the presence of the revived demons from the last arc. The last part sets off Gash when Q says he doesn't care about the tragedy of that situation, where brainwashed people and manipulated demons were forced to fight. Gash's experience from those fights come out in full force, as he can outmaneuver Coral Q before hitting him with a Zaguruzemu. Grub uses a large beam spell in the hopes of forcing Kiyomaru to cast Baozakerega now instead of later, but he instead uses another Zaguruzemu and Zakerega, taking a chance that it would be enough. And it is. Ganjiru Doroboron is Grub's next move, transforming Coral Q again and surrounding him with multiple flying shields. But there's something Kiyomaru noticed that they can use to break through his defense. A small detail that's hard to notice on a first read, but it's definitely there when you go back to it. The already glowing Coral Q lit up a bit more when the Zakerega attack got closer to him. The Zaguruzemu from earlier, a spell they've only used in one battle before, reacted inside Coral Q to the other spell outside of just powering up an attack, as if the spell is more than what they first assumed. This gives Kiyomaru the idea of using Zaguruzemu to create a chain link using the shields that lets Bao, now also greatly powered up from the chain, finish their opponents off. Before he returns to the demon world, Coral Q offers them some information since they beat him. His demon detecting radar picked up, guess this, a demon. Kind of. Maybe? Wonder what he means by that. Oh hey, Zeon. What's got you all worked up, buddy? Oh, it's just a gigantic demon world structure appearing in the human world, the mere presence of which is surprising to one of the strongest demons here. Surely this can only be a good thing. The Coral Q fight is a good one and a very strong start to the arc proper. Kiyomaru himself acknowledges that only demons strong enough to withstand Zophius' army are still around. That's not necessarily true, but it obviously can be for the ones picking fights. A great deal of planning had to go into Coral Q and Grubs' strategy, and it was great for backing Gash and Kiyomaru into a corner. Genuinely might be one of my favorites in the whole series. Sunbeam has finally found a new home. Means time for our main duo, along with Umagon and Suzume, to get him a housewarming gift. But that's not all. Gash called up Tio and Megumi to see if they wanted to come along. This makes it a very emotional day for Suzume. On the one hand, Megumi is Suzume's favorite idol. On the other hand, Megumi also seems to be closer to Suzume's crush than Suzume is. In example, both of them call each other by their given names instead of family names. Meaning this day out shopping with friends leads to exactly what you think it might. An interrogation, featuring a department store lie detector. Suzume thinks, at the end, that maybe there's nothing to worry about. Until Megumi pipes in that she and Kiyomaru share a secret, throwing Suzume off, again. And ultimately, the gift they get for Sunbeam? The lie detector. Because Suzume, bless her heart, took it out of the box at the store, but she makes up for it with some cooking that no one enjoys. Wait a sec, I think I skipped something. Oh yeah, the structure is reported on TV, letting our protagonist know about it, and that it disappeared after people had found it. Anyways, another fun little breather of a chapter with some plot progression thrown in at the end. More Suzume faces makes more gooder, after all. There is one line that I think I could mention, but it's only of importance when we get to the comparison. Destiny. And now for the last section of the story for this video. Another day, another demon. Ted and their partner Jeed roll into town. Ted and Jeed have an interesting dynamic. Jeed says that he'll go get food and tells Ted that he's in charge of finding lodging and his own half of the bill for both of these things, letting him off on his own with the exception of any demon fighting. No money for lodging means you camp out, and no money for food means it goes on a tab. Some humans give their demons the bare essentials, treating them like tools. Others go in the complete opposite direction, treating their demon partner like a member of the family. For me to know where Jeed falls on the spectrum, I feel like maybe I'd have to know more about him. I'll be kicking myself after this if it's something we find out later, because I've already read this arc twice prior to writing this script, but I don't think we learn very much about Jeed. Is the reason they're out on the road just because Ted is looking for someone, or is this also just how Jeed lives? Is he a drifter? He makes sure Ted has food, obviously, but he can't be serious about Ted finding any work to avoid camping out without Jeed's tent. At the end of the day, as Ted states as a recurring problem, nobody wants to give him any work on account of, he's a little kid. Jeed does hit Ted in the back of the head, but it's played up as a comedic bunk instead of child abuse. Which I'm grateful for since I get to avoid having to talk about a serious issue. For part 1, at least. Oh, this series is going to be hard to write for. I'm sure this wasn't something we, the readers, were meant to dwell on, but I am curious as to how this was intended to be seen. Back to the story, Ted finds some cardboard he can use for shelter, but finds another kid, Gash, already inside. Things escalate with the two boys fighting over Gash's secret base. It's not until there's a showing off of their tremendous strength that they both realize, oh, you're a demon too, as Ted, like Gash, lacks a sixth sense to tell him when someone's a demon. The boys strike up a conversation. Ted's looking for a girl named Cherish, who's like his only family to him. Gash hasn't seen her, but he can understand the importance to Ted she must have, as Gash has no memories before arriving in the human world, so he can't even remember his own family. It's an important bonding moment for the two of them, leading to Ted and Jeed staying at Gash's house for the night, and Kiyomaru's surprised at seeing two bikers sitting at his kitchen table. Plus, there's a guy with a sword outside looking for Bao. That's gotta be fun. Jeed asks about the expectation of a fight between Ted and Gash, but Kiyomaru says there probably won't be one. He and Gash have had a lot of experience fighting, but they're not the biggest fans of it, and, from his and Gash's own impression thus far, Jeed and Ted seem like good people. And Jeed's down with it. Him and Ted are just looking for someone. They don't really have any intention to go looking for fights. Once everyone has gone to sleep, Earth, the name of the demon that's waiting outside, sends his killing intent to Kiyomaru and Gash, alerting them of his presence. Earth makes them an offer. They either fight him alone somewhere else, or let their home become a battlefield. The four of them head to a riverbank. Earth begins the battle almost immediately, only explaining that his reason for targeting them is because they have Bao. He says it's not a normal spell, and that it and another wonder of the demon world that appeared recently are things that he can't leave alone. Naturally, he's giving us information about the mysterious structure, but when Kiyomaru asks about it specifically, Earth only deepens the mystery by saying that there's more than it just being a structure, and adds yet another mystery when he says that he and Gash don't realize the power of Bao. A single strike knocks down a powered-up Gash. who was otherwise doing well against Earth's spell-infused sword. Just when it seemed like they were about to lose, Gash is saved by Ted, the pompadour child wanting to help his new friend. He picked up on the vibe Earth had sent out and was just waiting until he could get G to wake up. I do wonder if this means Umagon slept through it, or if he just decided to hang back since his partner wasn't there. I mean, he does have hooves, so he's not exactly going to be able to just call up Sunbeam. Kiyomaru figures out from Gash's abnormally exhausted state that Earth's sword must have a strength-draining property that affects those that come into contact with it. It's important that Kiyomaru yells this out to Ted so that Ted can do absolutely nothing different about how he's fighting Earth. Ted's spells are a unique thing about him. They all just increase his speed and strength and have to be used in order from first to second and so on, but they ramp up his stats enough that Earth is having difficulties fighting him. Earth says Bao is one of two threats to both the human and demon worlds, but Ted responds that if that means killing his friend, then that threat of his isn't more important. Earth is knocked down, causing his human partner, Ellie, to scream and finally speak up, and make quite the impression with the heavy shadows on her face. Somewhat intimidating for the smallest child in the story so far. She apologizes to Earth for underestimating their opponents, and their next spell, Gerudo Masorudo, shows that she and Earth have been holding back. Ted needs time to take things up a level, so Gash forces himself back into the fight. They buy time by firing Zaguzemu 3 times, with one hitting Earth's sword, and Ted's Forotsunagiru is strong enough to force Earth and Ellie to cross the river to put distance between them. This is exactly what Kiyomaru was wanting. Those two Zaguzemu I mentioned that didn't hit Earth, they hit rocks in the river, letting him set up a chain like in the last fight. Earth and Ellie respond with one of the aces hidden up their sleeves. It works, but it's not an easy counter, and this convinces Ellie that they shouldn't continue this fight. Ted wants to pursue them, but it's obvious to Jeed and Kiyomaru that even that last spell wasn't all Earth was capable of. The chapter ends with Ellie talking with Earth. Bao hasn't had its full power unleashed, so now it's time for them to address the other threat. The one Ellie finally refers to by its name, Faudo. The introductions of Ted, Earth, and their partners is another good step for the arc to take. A strong new ally and opponent to be seen again later, both adding to the questions the reader must have in mind. What's going to happen with this cherished character? What did Earth mean by Faudo being more than a structure? What is Bao really? The Faudo arc went on to be the longest arc in the story for a reason. It has a lot of different things going on throughout its run. There is also the creative aspect of the fight, a strong point of the series in general. Ted's ability obviously lends itself to tension building. Enhanced speed and strength are basic, but needing to bide time for the boost to ramp up makes his power interesting. He's strong enough at the start of a fight to not be a pushover, but also pose something of a looming threat to his opponent, since if the battle drags on too long, Ted will only become harder to beat. And Earth? Well, there's cool and varied abilities centered on his sword. I think they speak for themselves. Except for the strength draining. That aspect exists so that Gash needed to be saved, and so it would be easier to work Ted into the fight. Minor spoiler, it's used one more time in the future, and it matters for less than a page. Gonna be focusing on bigger changes, naturally. But to mention the extremely minor ones real quick, where did Jeed park his bike exactly? I get having to give him and Ted helmets, but how come he can't smoke? He's not a kid. Or is it someone's worry that he just might be too cool? And outfits. And maybe they're different because it's warmer outside when this aired, but that shouldn't matter to a show that's animated and not being filmed, but there you go. The TV version of Kiyomaru's return to school is rewritten, for more than just the obvious expanding of the material from a single chapter to an entire episode. A lot of character interactions are rewritten. Suzume gets no moment to shine, but she at least does get to hold hands with Kiyomaru.
Mizuno, hashiru zo.
So she's got that going for her. On the lesser side though, we have Kiyomaru's other classmates. Can you guess what their one trait is? The writers for this show really did not want to have these guys be more than one-note characters. I didn't mention their lines in the comic, but yeah, it's just not that bad. Then we have Monmon Sensei. Okay, I'm looking at my notes that I took a year ago. Paper noise placeholder. I wrote the word boabular. Okay, past me, what did we mean by that?
がもんしてるもんしてる
集中できない。
Right. I felt like making up a turn to remind me about that, and I actually would have written a certain sound effect to remember this aspect, but I didn't want to confuse myself into thinking that the character named after said sound effect was in this episode. You know, this is a show that really enjoys exploring physics, but it doesn't actually do it too often given how few characters are, built for that. More notably, not only do they actually give Mon a song in this episode, they actually let her sing it twice. But more importantly, I think someone had the same thought as me about Umugon's role. Him moving out is omitted entirely, but that might also have to do with the placement, as I'll get to in a moment. The next episode takes us to the Coral Q story, where oh, right. Mini tangent time. This guy is from the Maestro arc, a mini arc original to the TV series. It takes place immediately before the Mon episode, and is wrapped up in episode 100, Mon being in episode 99. That placement makes no sense given the Mon episode is irrelevant to the arc. So, moving ahead to 101 for Coral Q, and right off the bat, they have Faudo appear by itself. So instead of having the super strong, mysterious guy be surprised by it alongside the audience, we have nothing, meaning a much less impactful reveal. At the very least, it's clear we have the start of a new arc, given a change in the opening and ending themes. Moving right along to Coral Q. Alright, no more messing around. There's a reason I chose to cover this set amount of the story in the first video. The Coral Q fight and the Earth fight are swapped around in the TV series. That's nothing new for this show though. For example, the reunion with Kanchome and Parco Faragore in London is moved from the end of the trip to the beginning. This lets the two of them tag along for the storming of the castle, where they fill out the runtime without really contributing anything. But that doesn't seem like it was the same case here. Instead, what we get is a bunch of rewrites. Instead of Kiyomaru learning from Earth that the structure is more than just a structure, Earth is now the first person he hears from about there even being something that appeared from the demon world. We still see Zeon's reaction to Faudo, but again, it's no longer tied in with the audience's first sighting of it. His initial surprise from the end of level 167 is placed at the end of episode 102, while his follow-up at the start of level 168 saying that it will be worth investigating is placed after the commercial break in the middle of the episode? I don't see why they wouldn't just combine the two brief scenes into just one, especially because the fight with Earth is going on right now. It's sort of not over yet. The scene of Faudo on TV goes from Kiyomaru speculating if this is what Coral Q was talking about, to just, mightn't this have something to do with the demons? Meaning he doesn't even draw a possible connection between this and what Earth was saying until after Coral Q was defeated. There is also, unfortunately, a screw-up. Kiyomaru in the TV series casts another Zakeruga after hitting Earth's sword with Zaguruzemu. Earth just dodges the attack completely, even though Zakeruga should be drawn to his sword. I'd say the temporary increase in brightness in this shot is from his sword glowing more off-screen, but it does seem more in time with it just being light from the blast. Ted sticks around for an extra episode, borrowing the opening of a later chapter. Ted picks up on what he thinks is Cherish's scent, so he and Gash go looking for her. Naturally, it's a bust. She's not here. But it lets Gash and Ted have more bonding time. The biggest weakness of the episode is the 2 minutes it wastes on some guys who want to beat up the boys. They are not a threat to the kids who are lifting boulders over their heads 2 episodes ago. The last thing about this one is this line right here. This is a line in the original as well, but it's something to remember a long time from now when the TV staff takes the purpose of this line in a much different direction. The housewarming episode just fills its time slot with more of Suzume failing at things, which honestly feels like a bit much.
ファードをきれいに結び直したの
せっかく繋いだのに
Most of the latter half of it is the gang helping Sunbeam set up the new place, and Suzume being dumb and or clumsy, relying way too much on this one type of joke. A scene where she doesn't want Kiyomaru and Megumi engaging in the intimate act of lifting a box together doesn't hit right when instead he lifts a couch with Sunbeam, and Suzume reacts with more disgust than jealousy. It's not a great look, so I'm just gonna pretend. It's because she actually sees Sunbeam as having a greater chance at stealing her man, thus upsetting her. Yeah, that's it. My headcanon is not up for debate. Also, there's that line I mentioned that's relevant here. When Megumi mentions her and Kiyomaru's secret, as if to intentionally upset Suzume, Tio wonders to herself if Megumi did that because she herself also likes Kiyomaru. The TV version omits this line. That's just really weird given the fact that this is the same adaptation that likes to play up, and even add, these little shipping moments. But on the flip side, we have the 3 episodes following Coral Q and Grub. This is an example of when I say that I prefer the TV version of a storyline. This one fills the time with lots of added and good gags, including one where Coral Q asks who the heck blew up his escape route, only to be reminded that he did that. There's also a recurring one where Suzume gets lost, but that one works better than in the previous episode because she's used sparingly instead of making her suffering a focal point. It also highlights the series' second Sailor Moon reference, one that's easy for me to gloss over in the comic.
ベルギムイオのイオは椅子に座ってお仕置き用だ
Coral Q gets his own character song. They even incorporate a partial repeat into the story when Kiyomaru asks if they can transform again. More than making up for not being able to copy the comic's transformation sequence. I love it. Plus, they wait an episode before repeating the song with a completely different take. I don't mean that just to take a jab at Momon's song, but this is also a song where Kiyomaru doesn't have to be strangled to join in. And then, there's Grub. Coral Q very much carries the two of them in the comic, leading to me not noticing that Grub doesn't add much on his own. The TV staff saw this and noticed an opening to expand the story with a character arc. Grub is a lot like Kiyomaru from the beginning of the series. He's a teenage genius without many friends, and believes the kids his age, and other people, are beneath him. That includes Kiyomaru, but he still wonders why another genius is associating with, as he puts it, trash. At the end of the battle, instead of just sitting there quietly, Grub asks Kiyomaru why he took a chance on Zaguruzemu, even though they've never used the spell in that manner before. Kiyomaru says it's because he believes in Gash and vice versa. It's a belief in their friends that's been pushing them to become stronger. Kiyomaru closed himself off from other people before meeting Gash, and now he's grown a lot as a person. Coral Q's last words are now to his partner, telling him to make friends with the people around him. The two of them have connection, and Grub looks back fondly on Q after he stops isolating himself. Again, I don't mind some human partners being essentially blank slates that leave only their demons to make the impact for them, but I love that the TV writers can see them as blank canvases to try and do more with. It sure will be a far cry from the end of the show, however, when the writers get to let's wrap this up as quickly as possible mode and start axing character arcs left and right. There's just one more episode left to mention in this video. Homesick, Hana and Mother, Wanderless Gash. Instead of just having 2-sentence long episode titles, Toei Animation said, what if this went even further beyond? So we had 3-part titles for the rest of the series. This episode also marks the start of some slight changes to the opening credits, with technically not a cold open, a new title card that can seemingly be placed anywhere in the episode, the removal of the mid-episode eye catchers, a shorter next episode preview, and a segment at the end swapping characters' hairstyles, because why not? It's an episode focused around family, specifically mothers and how Gash can't remember a thing about his. Gash is upset about it, and Kiyomaru unintentionally makes things worse by saying that, while he's here, he may as well just think of Kiyomaru's mom, Hana, as his real mother. Making Gash feel even more upset and just running out. Gash is scared of losing whatever feelings he has for his original mother, even though he has come to love Hana like a mother. It's a tearjerker of an episode. It brings to the forefront an aspect that can be overlooked in this action and adventure based series. These superpowered demon children are just that, children. They have lives back home that, regardless if they wanted to fight here, they had no say in leaving. Dio adds her own perspective to this too. She remembers her family, and is glad to have Megumi and all the other friends she's made, but that doesn't keep her from getting homesick. Faudo has a strong opening act. Changes in the status quo, a clear escalation in how strong the remaining demons must be, and the beginning of several different plotlines. The television adaptation has its hits and misses, but I think these episodes, overall, play to the TV version's strengths. Had it not been for the show moving around storylines, I would not have been foolish enough to try and cover 10 chapters and 9 episodes in a format that I'm still figuring out, hoping to keep it simpler next time. Speaking of which, a little pony demon fights a little bicorn demon. The mystery of Faudo continues to deepen, raising more questions than answers, and a bunch of people find out the hard way that they can't ice skate. Thank you for watching.